They laughed when he rode past. The boy with the squeaky, rusted bike that looked like it barely held together. To them, he was just another kid from the wrong side of town. Too poor, too different, too easy to mock. But what they didn't know was that the same bike they laughed at would one day change everything, because years later, that same boy would return, not as the kid they ridiculed, but as the man who built something the whole world wanted. How does someone go from being humiliated to becoming a symbol of innovation and strength? This is Aaron's story. In the small neighborhood of Oak Ridge, the sound of bicycle chains was the rhythm of childhood. Every afternoon, kids raced down cracked streets, showing off shiny new bikes with neon frames and chrome wheels that glittered in the sun. But Aaron's bike was different, old, faded, and squeaky with every turn of the pedal. Its paint had peeled, the seat was torn, and one handlebar grip was missing. Still, to Aaron, it was freedom. He rode that bike to school every day, through the same narrow alleyways where laughter often turned sharp. The other kids would stare, then smirk. Some whispered behind his back. Others didn't bother to hide their words. "Man, that thing looks older than your grandpa," one boy once shouted, sending waves of laughter through the crowd. Aaron just kept pedaling, not because it didn't hurt, but because he'd learned that slowing down only made the laughter last longer. At home, the bike leaned beside a small porch, next to a mother who worked double shifts and a younger sister who dreamed of better days. Aaron would spend evenings fixing the old frame with whatever scraps he could find. Wire, tape, even bottle caps when screws went missing. Each night, he'd wipe the grease from his hands and look out at the stars, imagining what it might feel like to ride something new, something built by his own hands. He didn't know it yet, but those quiet nights, with nothing but moonlight and determination, were shaping the man he was meant to become. The summer heat in Oak Ridge was merciless, and so were the stairs. As Aaron grew older, the laughter around him didn't fade. It evolved. It wasn't just kids anymore. It was store clerks who followed him down aisles, neighbors who locked car doors when he passed, teachers who assumed his silence meant he didn't care. Racism didn't always shout. It often whispered, and Aaron heard every word. By the time he turned 16, that old bike had become more than transportation. It was his escape. After school, he'd ride for miles beyond the edge of town, where the cracked roads met open fields, and the air didn't carry judgment. He'd park near a junkyard fence, where discarded bikes, parts, and twisted frames piled high like forgotten dreams. That's where his fascination began, taking old things and making them move again. One evening, as the sky turned the color of rust, Aaron was riding home when headlights flared behind him. A police cruiser. He wasn't speeding. He wasn't doing anything wrong. Still, the car slowed beside him. The window rolled down. "Hey, boy." "That your bike?" Aaron's hands tightened on the grips. "Yes, sir," he said softly, keeping his eyes forward. "Looks too nice for you to own," the officer said, his voice dripping suspicion. Aaron's stomach knotted. His bike wasn't nice. It was patched together with scraps. But he stayed silent, just like his mother had taught him. The officer circled him once, his flashlight tracing the frame, before finally driving off. But that look, the one that said "you don't belong here," stayed burned in Aaron's mind long after the taillights disappeared. That night, under the porch light, he couldn't stop thinking. Why was his worth always questioned? Why did every look, every word, make him feel like he had to prove himself? He picked up his wrench and turned it over in his hand. Maybe he couldn't change how people saw him, but he could change what he built. From that night on, Aaron started collecting scrap metal and bike parts from the junkyard. Bent frames, broken chains, rusted wheels. He saw potential where others saw waste. He sketched designs in an old notebook, inspired by the idea of strength. Not just mechanical, but emotional. Something unbreakable. Weeks turned into months. Every evening, sparks flew from his small corner of the porch as he welded pieces together. Neighbors shook their heads, calling it a waste of time. "That boy always messing with junk," they'd say. But Aaron kept working, driven by something deeper. The need to rise above the laughter, the racism, the constant doubt. One afternoon, while riding through town, a group of older boys blocked his path. They'd laughed at him for years, but this time their words cut sharper. "Still riding that busted thing, huh?" Aaron didn't respond. He swerved past them, but one of them kicked his back tire. He stumbled, crashing into the dirt. The laughter exploded. He stood up, dusted off his shirt, and picked up the bent frame. His knees were scraped, his pride bruised, but his eyes burned with something fierce. That night, he didn't cry. He didn't complain. He rebuilt, stronger, smarter. And for the first time, he realized something powerful. The same people who mocked him were the reason he refused to quit. The air in Oak Ridge was still thick with prejudice, but something in Aaron had shifted. He was no longer just a boy on a bike. He was becoming a builder, a thinker, someone who would turn pain into purpose. He didn't know it yet, but the next step he took would set him on the path to creating something that no one could ever laugh at again. The day of the community race arrived. A local tradition in Oak Ridge that everyone talked about, but few expected Aaron to join. Kids from across town lined up at the starting point, their brand-new bikes shining like trophies. Aaron stood among them, his rebuilt bike, a patchwork of metal and imagination, looking out of place. The crowd whispered. Some laughed outright. "Look who showed up with that Frankenstein bike," someone said, and the laughter rolled like thunder. Aaron's heart pounded, but he didn't flinch. This was his moment. When the whistle blew, the racers surged forward. The first stretch was chaos. Tires kicking dust, gears grinding, shouts cutting through the summer air. Aaron pushed with everything he had. His homemade bike creaked, but it held. Each pedal was a protest, every turn a declaration that he belonged here as much as anyone. Halfway through the race, he took a sharp corner. Too fast. His back wheel slid. He hit the ground hard, the metal scraping his leg. The laughter from the sidelines returned, cruel and familiar. "Told you he'd crash." Pain shot through his knee, but something stronger rose inside him. The same fire that had kept him going all those nights on the porch. He lifted the bike, blood dripping down his leg, and got back on. The chain slipped once, twice, then caught. He pedaled harder, faster, past the taunts, past the boys who had laughed for years. The wind roared in his ears. For a moment, it felt like the whole world went silent. Just him, his heartbeat, and the road ahead. As he crossed the finish line, bruised, bleeding, and last, the crowd didn't cheer. But Aaron didn't need them to. In that moment, he understood. This race wasn't about winning. It was about proving he'd never stop riding, no matter how many times the world tried to make him fall. And that night, under the same moonlight that had witnessed his struggle for years, he made himself a promise that one day they would all ride something he built. Years passed, and the boy who once rode through laughter and doubt became a man with vision. Aaron left Oak Ridge carrying more than memories. He carried every insult, every stare, every moment that told him he wasn't enough. But instead of letting those moments define him, he turned them into fuel. In college, he studied mechanical engineering, often staying up late in the same silence he'd once known on his porch. While others worked on cars or machines, Aaron focused on bicycles. The thing that once brought him pain now became his purpose. He poured his heart into building something stronger, lighter, and faster. A bike designed for anyone who'd ever been told they didn't belong. When he finally launched his design, the response was overwhelming. Magazines called it revolutionary. Athletes wanted to ride it. The same kind of people who once mocked him now lined up to buy what he created. But Aaron didn't gloat. He didn't need to. Because every time someone rode one of his bikes, they were unknowingly carrying a piece of his story. A story of struggle, pride, and perseverance. He returned to Oak Ridge one summer, driving past the same cracked streets where it all began. Children sped by on bikes, some of them his own design, their laughter echoing through the air. He smiled. The same sound that once hurt, now healed. Racism had tried to chain him to shame, but he turned those chains into gears that pushed him forward. His journey became a symbol of what resilience can build, even in a world that tries to tear you down. Because sometimes, the loudest revenge isn't anger or hate, it's success, it's progress, it's turning pain into purpose, and maybe, just maybe, it's proof that no matter how many times they laugh at you, you keep riding anyway. Don't miss more powerful real-life stories. Hit subscribe now.